Illegal immigration. This stream of humanity crossing into our nation has been going on for a long time. It has finally arrived on the front pages of the newspapers and captured the attention of the evening news anchors. It's about time. I'm president of the John Birch Society, and like all of our members, I have always believed that no topic stands alone. Each exists within the context of larger events, and it is this context that should not be ignored. To begin, I want to stress the importance of a document that every American knows exists. It's called the Constitution of the United States. Every politician, of course, swears to abide by it, and every citizen should be familiar with it. The first thing to know about the Constitution is that it limits the government, not the people. Toward the end of the Constitution, we find a very important requirement in Article 4, Section 4. It says, "The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion." Let me stress that. The United States shall protect each of them, the states, against invasion. Right now, there are somewhere between 11 and 20 million illegal aliens within our borders. Many have entered by crossing the border separating our nation from Mexico. If this isn't an invasion, what is it? Proponents of this mass movement of humans have certainly called it an invasion. Mexican commentator Carlos Loret de Mola celebrated this drastic demographic change in an article for Mexico's Excelsior magazine as far back as 1982. His article carried the title, "The Great Invasion, Mexico Recovers Its Own." Loret de Mola wrote, "A peaceful mass of people carries out slowly and patiently an unstoppable invasion, the most important in human history. It seems to be slowly returning the southwestern United States to the jurisdiction of Mexico without the firing of a single shot by means of a steady, spontaneous, and uninterrupted occupation." When these words were penned by Loret de Mola in 1982, illegal immigration from Mexico to our country was a mere trickle compared to the flood of illegal immigrants now pouring into the United States. The Constitution didn't specify that the states should be protected only against a military invasion. It directed the government of the United States to protect against invasion. And upwards of 11 million illegal entrants constitutes an invasion. And Loret de Mola stated his belief that this invasion is unstoppable. If his 24-year-old contention is accurate, we will soon lose several of our southwestern states. Almost all politicians, reporters, radio and television commentators, professors, and others customarily refer to the millions of invaders as undocumented workers, or guest workers, or job-seeking immigrants. But the reality is that the millions who have come here uninvited have thumbed their noses at our laws and entered the United States illegally. Their invasion has produced many serious consequences. The illegal immigrants have created enormous financial drains on states and communities where they have migrated, forced many hospitals out of business because of having to care for immigrants who have no funds. In Southern California alone, dozens of hospitals have closed their doors. Inundated the schools with their children and demanded that they receive instruction in their native language rather than in the language of our nation, English. They have also filled the prisons with their criminal element in highly impacted areas. 30% of federal prison inmates, the perpetrators of violent crimes, are illegal aliens. They have brought with them drugs and other contraband that harms Americans, formed criminal gangs and syndicates that terrorize various communities, refused to assimilate or even to aspire to gain citizenship. They have demanded the return to Mexico of several southwestern states, flown the flags of foreign nations, heaped scorn on the stars and stripes, and even produced their own Spanish-language version of the Star-Spangled Banner. They have accepted work at reduced scales with the result that pay scales for poorer Americans have been lowered. broken our laws against the manufacture and use of fraudulent visas, passports, and social security identification. They have cast illegal ballots and formed political blocs to support politicians who champion their cause. They have skirted tax laws while insisting on social services paid for by taxpayers. And they have forced the overworked and outmanned U.S. Border Patrol to create a new category of illegal entrants called OTMs, other than Mexicans. These are Arab speakers, Asians, Eastern Europeans, Latin Americans, and others. History shows that amnesty for illegal entrants only encourages more to illegally cross the border. An extensive survey taken in Mexico by the liberal Pew Hispanic Center showed that 40% of Mexico's citizens, that's almost 50 million people, would like to move to the United States. Are we willing to accept all of these people and more into our country? In 1986, Congress passed and the President signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act. It granted amnesty to 2.7 million illegal immigrants who are already here. The politicians who crafted this bill assured opponents that they had solved the immigration problem. They informed fellow legislators and the American people that there wouldn't be any more illegal crossings of the border. But just the opposite happened, as even more illegals started flooding across the southern border. New amnesty proposals, if passed, will reward upwards of 11 million lawbreakers with the most coveted status in the world, free access to America and the road to full American citizenship. This would reduce to mockery the road traveled by so many who complied with our laws, entered our nation legally, stood in various lines, studied to pass citizenship tests, learned the English language, pledged to obey all of our nation's laws, and gratefully assimilated into the American system.
I now declare that each of you is a citizen of the United States.
The point we wish to stress is that action is needed. The Constitution mandates it, and so do increasing millions of tax-paying Americans. The following dozen steps ought to be undertaken if this nation is going to remain free and independent. Here's what our elected leaders must do. 1, reject all calls for amnesty under any name. 2, protect the southwestern border with a substantial fence. 3, beef up the Border Patrol. The New York City Police Department is assigned to protect a very small area with 2.5 times the number serving in the Border Patrol. Yet the Border Patrol's job is to guard a 2,000-mile southern border and a 5,000-mile border with Canada. If needed, American military personnel should be stationed at the border. Our military's presence alone would deter invasion. 4, our leaders should keep promises. When President Bush entered the White House, he promised to hire 2,000 more Border Patrol agents every year. He didn't. If he had kept his promise, there would be 10,000 new Border Patrol agents by now. But he has arranged for fewer new agents than are lost through normal attrition. 5, increase penalties for anyone involved in document fraud with visas, passports, Social Security identification, and so forth. 6, withhold federal funds from state and local governments that impede their own law enforcement personnel from questioning, apprehending, or detaining invaders. 7, cancel the granting of automatic citizenship to infants born here of illegal immigrants. These so-called anchor babies are then given the right to invite family members to enter our nation. This is both ridiculous and harmful. 8, enforce laws against hiring illegal immigrants. 9, begin the process of deporting those who have invaded our nation. Each person deported should be advised that there's a proper procedure to enter this nation, and each is indeed welcome to apply for legal entry. 10, direct the appropriate U.S. authorities to consider revocation of tax-exempt status for foundations that supply the funds for militant hate America groups such as MALDEF, MECHA, and La Raza. 11, The American people should inform elected officials and candidates for office at every level that their stance regarding all of the above recommendations will be considered by voters on Election Day. And 12, finally, our leaders should notify Mexico's authorities, right up to and including Presidente Fox, that our nation will no longer tolerate any meddling in our legal affairs or trespassing into our nation by Mexican police and military units. There have been more than 200 incursions by military units from Mexico into the United States, many for the purpose of providing cover for drug smugglers. Everyone knows that our nation is a nation made up almost entirely of immigrants. Either we ourselves or our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and others came here from elsewhere. None of them wanted anything more than to be free to work, to produce, to keep the fruits of their labor, and to pass on to children and grandchildren the wonderful system of limited government that has made our country the envy of the world. Our ancestors came here legally, quickly learned the language if they didn't already know it, adopted the American culture, and attained full citizenship. Our nation still welcomes 1 million legal immigrants every year, more than the rest of the world combined. But the invaders who have come here illegally are demanding the rights and privileges of citizenship while threatening to destroy the nation.
It's a time of war, and it's time to revolt, and it's good.
Invaders are different and should be treated differently. President George Bush and other U.S. leaders, especially some corporate leaders, see the people of Mexico as a source of cheap labor or even a source of recruits for our thinly spread military. These leaders bleat about compassion, as if compassion is a substitute for sound thinking and enforcement of our laws. They either know no history or they have an agenda that must be exposed. That agenda became glaringly obvious when, in March 2005, President Bush hosted a meeting near his home, attended by President Fox of Mexico and Prime Minister Martin of Canada. The three met to launch what they called the Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America. Doesn't that sound nice? Security, prosperity, and partnership? Sometimes nice-sounding names cover over dangerous policies. This Security and Prosperity Partnership happens to be a scheme to abolish the borders of the three nations and create a regional government similar to the European Union. That's right. The plan is to deal with the serious border problem by abolishing the borders. This will lead to an eventual transfer of the new regional government to a world government. The impetus for this revolutionary program came from the New York City-based Council on Foreign Relations. Let's go over a little bit of the history of this subversive proposal. In June 2005, a Council on Foreign Relations task force issued a document entitled Building a North American Community. It calls for a common border around the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. It seeks integration of Mexican and Canadian personnel into our nation's Department of Homeland Security. And it calls for migrant worker programs to be expanded so that any worker from each of these three countries can relocate to wherever he chooses. Those 50 million people in Mexico would get their wish. This radical program received additional backing from Mr. Bush and his Mexican and Canadian counterparts when the three met in Cancun in March 2006. If these internationalist plans are implemented, we can kiss the U.S. Constitution goodbye, tear up the Declaration of Independence, and see America converted into a carbon copy of the many previous despotic regimes across the world. We don't have to accept the invasion of our country by people from other nations. We don't have to lose our country to the internationalists who want to rule the world. We can force our leaders to do what's right for America, and we can even restore the Constitution to full force and effect, but only if we have the understanding and the determination to do so. Members of the John Birch Society are determined to do everything they can to preserve this nation, but help is needed. And we invite all who hear this program to contact us and get involved in the fight for America.